welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are excited to be introducing some brand new giant word dies. We have Giant Happy Easter, Giant Happy Mother's Day, Giant Happy Spring, and Giant Get Well Soon. So let's go ahead and check these out. First up, we have Giant Happy Easter, and this one is so great for adding a bold greeting to cards. You can do it both portrait and landscape on a standard size card, which is 5.5 by 4.25. So here you can see it portrait, and then here you can see it landscape. And I absolutely love using these die cuts on cards. Next up, we have our Happy Mother's Day, which you can also use portrait and landscape. And I love that the mothers is this fun script. These are so much fun with little critters underneath in a scene. You can also use our tiny friends and layer them kind of balanced on all the different edges of the words. These are so much fun, and we're going to be showing you lots of really cool ways to use these dies today. Next up, we have Happy Spring, which once again fits on landscape and portrait. And I'm so excited in this video because we're not only making cards, but we're also doing a platform pop-up, and these words fit really well in it, so you'll have to check that out too. And then next up, we have our Get Well Soon, which fits amazingly on a landscape card. So now Shari is going to take it away and create 4 different cards that are absolutely incredible. So take it away, Shari.
For this card, I'm pairing the Giant Happy Spring with the Very Rainy Day stamps. So you can see I've colored and cut them out. I'm starting out with the largest of the mini Slimline stackables. This is a piece of Bristol cardstock. And I'm going to be doing some ink blending with Distress Oxide. So I have Cracked Pistachio, Peacock Feathers, and Mermaid Lagoon. Those are the 3 colors I am using for my background. I'm starting out with the lightest, which is the Cracked Pistachio. That's going along the bottom. Then I'll go in with Peacock Feathers. This is going to be through the center of my panel. And once I get a good layer of this down, I'll go back to the Cracked Pistachio and blend out the line between the two, making it softer and not so harsh. So I'm just working back and forth between the 2 colors till I get that nice soft transition between the 2. And then I'll pull in that Mermaid Lagoon for the darkest color along the top. I'm using a little piece of scrap paper just to protect my paper from leaving any fingerprints. So that just gives me a place to hold it while I put this layer of ink along the top. So I'm pulling that down from the corners and the edges, and then of course I'll go back with that Peacock Feathers and blend out between the 2. Now I am making a little rainy day scene with my bears and the umbrellas, so I'm going to use the Rainy Sky stencil, which fits across this 6-inch panel perfectly, and the clear stencil paste. And I'm just putting a layer of that through the stencil, and I'm going to get these really cool glossy clear raindrops on my inked background. So it's not going to change the color, you're just going to get this really subtle shine where those raindrops are. So I'll clean off my palette there and pull this up, and you're going to see those raindrops, and I'll just set that aside to dry. So now that it's nice and dry, you can see you have those sort of shiny raindrops. And now I'm going to work on my sentiment. So I'm using saltwater taffy and abandoned coral Distress Oxides. And I'm going to go ahead and ink this piece of Bristol cardstock first and then cut my sentiment out of it. You could cut it out first and ink it, but I find that it's easier to do it this way so you're not catching the edges of your die cut. So I've put the abandoned coral on about half of this, and then I'll go in with that saltwater taffy and do the other half. So it's going to almost look like a 2-toned sentiment with dark and light. So once I have that blended the way I like, I'm just going to take my die and cut my Happy Spring out of that inked piece of paper. Now I did want to add some sparkles along the bottom, so I'm taking a little bit of Stardust Stickles, just picking that up with my finger and just dabbing it along the bottom half of that word spring. So the word spring is going to almost be its own 2-tone, so you'll have that saltwater taffy along the top of the word spring and then the glittery part along the bottom. So while that glitter dries on my sentiment, I'm going to add some metallic splatters to my background. I waited till the stencil paste was nice and dry before I did the splatters. So I'm just using a white metallic just to add even more shine to that background. You could also just add drops of water because this is oxide ink and you'd get that oxidation with the water. Now that my glitter on my Happy Spring is nice and dry, I'm just going to take some die cuts from some white cardstock and stack them together. I have 3 of them here. And I'll just use some liquid glue to put those together. Stacking these together and putting them behind that inked sentiment is just going to give this sentiment some nice height and some thickness. It'll look kind of like a chipboard embellishment. Now for my card base, I cut a card base that's a little bit bigger than this 3x6 panel. So this card base is 3.5 by 6.5, so I get that little 1/4 inch border around it with the white. And then I can start to add all my elements. So I am going to use some liquid glue behind this sentiment. I do have that stencil paste on the background. The liquid glue is going to make sure this sentiment is nice and stuck down over top of those raindrops. I also have the little splashes from the Berry Rainy Day set, and I thought that would be fun to tuck behind the sentiment, almost like this sentiment is part of the scene splashing in the rain. And then I also have this little puddle, and I'm just going to figure out exactly where it's going to fit behind my bear. So for my bear, I'm just going to put some foam squares all over the back so that it can pop up off the background as well, sort of like the sentiment. And I like the look of this umbrella sort of going up off the top part of the card. So it doesn't really go past the top of the card itself, but it does go off that inked panel, which I just think is a really fun look. And then of course I colored the little frogs. So I'm going to add those as well. I have this little guy hopping. He's going to kind of fill in this empty space right here. And then I thought it'd be really cute if this little one was sitting on top of that G. And I do have one extra little splash here I'm going to add where that bear is stomping in the puddles. So I have splashes all around. Now I'm going to use the clear glaze to add some clear to those splashes and splatters that are stamped out. This is just going to make them match those clear, shiny raindrops in the background. And then here is that finished card with that giant Happy Spring paired up with that super cute bear from Berry Rainy Day. I'm starting out with the giant Happy Easter. I've die cut a piece of Guava Cardstock with that, as well as a piece of that pink paper from the Flower Market collection. And I'm just going to layer these 2 together with a little bit of an offset to get a really fun drop shadow. So for the images on this card, I'm using this little rabbit and his pot of paint from the Easter before and after stamp set. And then all those eggs I have colored and cut out are from the Magic Spring Messages stamp set. I am making a platform pop-up card, so I'm going to take my largest die that creates the box and cut 2 pieces from the Buttercup Flower Market paper. So I'm going to have this nice flower box for my platform pop-up. However, I did not want the top of it to be yellow with flowers. I wanted the top of it to be green like grass. So I'm using 2 scrap pieces of green Watercolor Wishes paper, and I'm just going to cut out that trapezoid shape. Now I am going to trim along the score lines that die creates because I only need the top of it. So I'm cutting off the extra and using those score lines as a guide. So I've just cut off the large piece, and if it's hard to see, you can fold it. It makes it a little bit easier to line up in the trimmer. And I'll just cut off this tab that you would normally use to help assemble the box. So I've got 2 of those, and I'm just going to glue them right to that shape of the box. You can use that slot to help line it up, which is kind of nice, and then of course since you use the die, the edges are going to be perfect. I am going ahead and folding on all of those score lines that the die creates. A little bit of something on my paper there. I was just making sure it came off. You don't want a black spot on your pretty yellow flower paper. And once I have all those score lines folded, I'll just glue this green piece right to the top. And this is going to create a different colored platform when our box is popped up. So I'll just do the same to the second piece so that everything matches nicely. Now I can put some double-sided adhesive onto those tabs and start to create my box. So there are 2 tabs on this box where you want to put this adhesive along this long tab here, and then of course along the short tab that is the outside of the box. Now on this particular one, I am actually only going to put a center piece in the middle for my sentiment to go on. I am not going to be putting those T-shaped pieces through the slots. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble my box. I'm using my grid mat to make sure that outside piece is lined up nice and straight. And then for these 2 pieces, I can peel off that liner paper. And I'm actually just going to fold them both up at the same time since my box is already together. So I've peeled off that liner paper, I'll fold it up, and now I have the 2 sides of my box. So I've cut one of those T-shaped pieces from some Cilantro cardstock. Since this piece goes in the center, I don't need to worry about the fold along the bottom, so I just trim that off with my scissors. And then I also have one of those grass pieces from the platform pop-up die that I'm going to put across the top of the T. So I'm just using that really thin double-sided tape to do that, making sure it's nice and stuck down. And this is where my sentiment is going to go. So I'll just go ahead and glue this onto the grass. And I'm doing it from the back side so that I make sure I don't put more glue than I need to. Make sure that's nice and stuck down along my grass. And then I'm adding my little rabbit over the letter A because he's kind of shaped that way. Sort of like a triangle with he's bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top where his ears are. And I'm adding the little pot of paint close by because he's in the middle of painting his egg, as you can see there. And then I'm going to put this in the center of the box. So I've got my double-sided adhesive all over that rectangular piece where the 2 pieces of 2 sides of the box are going to go together. And this T with the Happy Easter is just going to go right on the face of that rectangle. So it's going to be sandwiched between the 2 sides. I also want to pull that liner paper off the other side of the outside edge of the box, and then I'll just fold it over and make sure both of these are stuck together. And then you can see when that pops up, you have that nice green on top and the yellow on the outside. Now to decorate the outside of my box, I'm using the die pieces that come in the platform pop-up set to create a ribbon and a bow. So I've cut 2 of the pieces that are the ribbon, folded them on the score line. The short piece goes in the front and the long piece goes along the side. So those 2 short pieces will meet in the middle. And then the bow will cover up the seam between the 2. So there are 3 pieces to make this bow. These are the tails of the bow. And I'm just lining it up, covering up the seam between the 2 ribbon pieces. Then of course there is the main part of the bow here with the loops. And then there's a little piece for the center. And I cut all of these out of Ballet Slipper cardstock. And now that that's all stuck down, I have that cute little ribbon around the outside. Now, since I didn't use the slots for the other two pop-up pieces, I want to hide them and cover them up. So that is where all these eggs are going to come into play. So I've placed them so that they cover up the slot and you'll never know it's even there. So I think this is fun. It looks like a grassy field full of Easter eggs ready for someone to come and hunt them. And then I'm also going to add one standing up at the other end of my sentiment. And then I'll just add this last one. I was going to put it at the other side of my sentiment, but I felt like that was almost too symmetrical and there was a lot already covering up the letters on that end, so I put it on the grass. And then here is the finished platform pop-up with that giant Happy Easter and that cute little bunny from the Easter before and afters. On this card, I'm starting out with the new Spring Flowers backdrop die. I've cut this from some Cilantro cardstock. And then I've also used the pieces that cut out individual flowers and cut out some shimmer cardstock in some bright colors. I'm going to be layering these on to that cilantro piece. So I'm starting out with those largest flowers which are in the corners. There are 3 sizes of flowers in these dies. The smallest ones are out of that blue color, and then I also have the medium ones out of the orange. And I'm just working my way around, putting some dots of glue and layering these on the coordinating sized flowers from that background die cut. I also have those little tulips in each of the corners. I've cut those from that same pink cardstock so I get that nice balance of color all around. And then for the flower centers, I cut all of those out of a yellow shimmer cardstock. And I'm just putting a dot of glue in the middle of each of the flowers and picking up those centers and dropping them right in the center. Now for the background piece of my card, I'm going to use the Spiffy Speckles. I'm using this purple color. I just thought it would give some nice texture to the background and some color, but not overpower those bright colors of the flowers in that border. So I'm just layering this piece that's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 onto a card base. And then I'll just add some liquid glue all around the back of this die cut piece. You can see that I put it around the frame, and then I'm just adding little dots to all the leaves and the petals so that everything gets glued down. For the sentiment on this card, I'm using the giant Mother's Day die cut, and I'm cutting it from 2 cardstock. So first I have this black cardstock here. I love the mix of fonts in this die cut, but I want that Mother's, which is written in cursive, to stand out a little bit more, and I'm going to cut that from some gold glitter cardstock. So I've just got a strip of that, I'm lining it up, and I'll just run that through my die cut machine. And then I'm going to trim off the pieces of Happy and Day that are stuck to the word Mothers, because this cuts all in one piece, so you don't have to chase any little pieces around. I did have to cut off the little apostrophe, and you'll see me add that separately. So I'll just put some liquid glue on the word Mothers and layer that glittery gold right over top, which I just think is really pretty and it really catches your eye. And then you can see I also have that little apostrophe there. Now I'm just adding some liquid glue all over the back of this. It is going to overlap my flowers a little bit, so it's not completely flat, so the liquid glue is going to work really well to hold it in place and kind of get in all those nooks and crannies, especially where it overlaps the flowers. But it also gives me the chance to kind of shift it around and get it nice and centered. And then here's the finished card. Super simple, all die cuts, no stamping, and it is just so pretty. I'm making a mini slimline card, so I'm going to start out with the largest of the mini slimline stackables. I've cut this from some white cardstock, and I'm just using some removable adhesive to hold this down to my media mat. I'm going to be using those magnets to help hold these slimline cloudy stencils in place as I create my stormy sky background. I'm using some hickory smoke distress ink, and I'm tapping that off on a piece of scrap paper just so I don't have too much ink on my tool as I add it to my paper. And I'm switching between the two different slimline cloud stencils so that I get some variation across this background. I'm working my way from the top to the bottom, and you can see I'll go back and forth and shift those clouds around so that it doesn't look repetitive across this background. Now for the very bottom, I'm actually going to just go ahead and add some clouds to each corner instead of doing it all the way across again. This sort of just filled it in a little bit better. And then I'm going to make sure I don't have any white edges left by just inking up those edges. So now I have the start of a stormy sky, but I want to add some raindrops to it. So I'm using the rainy day stencil, and then I'm going to use some stormy sky distress oxide, which I just think is quite appropriate to use stormy sky as a color to make a stormy sky background. And I'm just adding that all over so that I have those blue raindrops all over my background. Now for that giant get well soon sentiment, I really wanted it to stand out against this stormy background. So I'm going to use this really bright and colorful rainbow stripe from the Really Rainbow paper pack to cut my sentiment out of. I'm also cutting a second one, as you can see there, out of black, and I'll use a bit of liquid glue on the back of the colorful sentiment and layer it with the black, offsetting it a little bit so I get this really fun drop shadow look. This will also help this stand out on that gray background. So I'm just going to add my inked panel with my cloudy sky to a card base that's cut to 3 inches by 6 inches. And then to add my sentiment, I'm going to add some foam tape all over the back so that it's popped up. So this is just another way of giving it some dimension. You could also stack die cuts behind it if you wanted. And then I'm just going to center this up right in the middle of this panel. So I've already colored and cut out the cute little bears from the Berry Rainy Day set. I've got some splashes of water colored as well, and I'm just going to add those behind my bears directly to the background. And then for my little bears, I'll use some foam squares to pop them up. And they fit perfectly on each side of the word soon. So for the bear on the right side, I've got that puddle because this bear looks like it's jumping into the puddle feet first. I'll add some foam squares to the back of that bear so that both my bears are popped up off the background. And then I also have this little splash to fill in around this bear. And then for the little frog, I just thought it would be cute for him to sit inside one of those O's. I just think that's super cute. And then of course I'm going to add a little bit of glitter to all my water just for some shine, and I'm also adding a little bit just here and there to some of those raindrops that I stenciled on the background. And then here is that finished Get Well Soon mini slimline card.
Thank you for creating such gorgeous cards, Shari. I absolutely love how you added glitter just to the bottom of the letters of Happy Spring. And then how fun is it that you can use these giant words in a platform pop-up, and this one is just absolutely adorable. Here I love how you added the glitter cardstock to the word mothers, and that beautiful frame just makes the whole card so special. And then I love that you showed that these are a perfect match for the mini slimline style cards, and this card would definitely make somebody's day. Now next up we have some beautiful cards by the design team, and here I love how Callie used the Happy Spring with the magic picture changer. This card here by Mindy is so pretty. I love the layered butterflies behind her Happy Spring letters. Here, Grace did this beautiful rainbow look, and I love how she layered the different colors of cardstock on the different letters. It's so pretty. This Easter card by Mindy is so much fun. I love that purple cloudy sky. And here, the shaker by Grace is adorable, and I love how she layered all the different pattern papers onto the Happy Easter. I love how Megan inked her letters and then added some white gel pen details. It's so cute and so much fun. And then this card here by Yainea is so pretty. I love that gingham for the sky and that cute little springtime bunny. Here I love how Letitia layered all of these pieces from our plant a succulent dies behind the Get Well Soon. It's so beautiful. And this card by Lynette is so pretty and cute, and those little layered hearts just make the whole thing so special. Card by Audrey is so cute, and this would definitely help someone get well soon, and that little whale is just adorable. Here, I absolutely love this shaker card by Mindy. It's so pretty, and those flowers just make the Happy Mother's Day stand out. And then here, Elise shows us that the Happy Mother's Day also fits in our platform pop-up, and I love that scene that she created with the snails and the flowers. I love that Kara used our goats with the Get Well Soon. It's so cute and so much fun. And then here, this card by Elena is just stunning using our strawberry patch and fruit basket dies. And then this card by Megan just blows me away. I love how she colored our spring flowers backdrop. It's so pretty and so much fun. And then last but not least, we have this stunning of card by Callie, and I love that yellow gingham with the Happy Mother's Day. It's so much fun to cut those words out of pattern paper too. So we cannot wait to see how you guys use these giant word dies, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!